Welcome to AsBAA, Asia Business Aviation Association. We are promoting three main pillars in here. That is representation, advocacy, and community. We are putting together all the industry players, the regulators, the authority, and the clients in order to grow the industry better, wider, and stronger. We have our vision, our mission. We would like to grow this industry together into a greater height. There is so much more potential in here, and we are very confident we could grow. We could be a significant contributor to the GDP of the country. We would like to see a lot more people filling in the gap on the talent management. We would like to see a lot more active participation from the government, from the agencies, from the operators come together in AsBAA, communicate with us, engage with us. We would like to be with you. You know, as a solution-focused organization, we would like to work together with every entity, every stakeholder that pushing the boundaries in this industry without compromising on safety.
University Kuala Lumpur Malaysian Institute of Aviation Technology is the partner university for the AsBAA Discovery, where AsBAA Discovery is providing the students for the future next aviation generations. So we are approved training organizations by local authority, CAAM, and also by the international authority, which is EASA. We are here to strengthen the collaborations in order to help the AsBAA Discovery.
Discovery is one of the main components on AsBAA overall. This is one initiative, our CSR initiative, to promote next generation coming together directly into the industry. We organize many business activities. We put them together in the aviation real environment, talking to our engineers, our pilots, our CEOs, and we also organize summer aviation camp that make them really learn the demand, the requirement, the real activities that happening in the industry. There is a little gap from the university and the industry, so by having this kind of activity, we solve that problem. By having this activity now, we open up to the university, to the public, to the parents, to the colleges, that hey, there are such things in a casual setup, in a more friendlier environment, you know, that encourage students to develop a little bit more deeper interest into the industry. This kind of activity is so important. People say seeing is believing. So this is part of it. Most of the feedback that we get from the parents, from the students that engage, this is life-changing experience for them, and we would like to do a lot more, especially in Malaysia.
If you're currently a student studying in aviation industries, we highly encourage you to participate in AsBAA Discovery for you to get direct exposure with the manufacturing industries, airlines, opportunities, activities, and to get your knowledge and insight directly with a first-hand experience within the industry itself. It is very exciting, and we can't wait to see you there. Thank you.
Every month, third week, on Tuesday, 2 p.m, we're having a Malaysia chapter meeting. So during this chapter meeting, we are putting together AsBAA members that consist of many categories, be it from the OEM, be it from the ground handlers, be it from the flight support, or other areas that is directly related and supporting our business. Now we are very happy because the government agencies are slowly come out and be part of our meeting, offering a lot more initiatives to encourage the growth, the development, and holding hands together with us in order to boost the development of this industry in this country. We have Women in Corporate Aviation Asia, WCAA, with the main objective to promote a lot more women in the industry. We believe women empowerment is highly needed in the male-dominated industry. We also promoting scholarship, mentoring, leadership, and global network. We have our sister organization in the USA, Europe and Middle East supporting most of our activity in here. Women talent, women pool are one area that is so underutilized. So we need to highlight this. We need to encourage a lot more women to be more involved, to step up and understand that there is so many opportunity in here and you can be part of it. AsBAA Discovery has been in establishment since 2018 until today. We are putting together the next generation and the industry player in the aviation environment so that we can learn, we can expose them, we can engage, we can communicate directly with the student. We want to know, sometimes they get confused or they are uncertain about certain things. So, having the right explanation from the right expert in the industry solve the issues of confusion. And sometimes they're really curious about certain things and they want to know the prospect of it, the future of it, how to go about. So using AsBAA Discovery platform, they enable them to eliminate the confusion or the misunderstanding or miscommunication or the uncertainties that they have in their mind or back in the university. So we have this engagement from time to time. We will try to do it a lot more often. Yes, today we have a good support from the state government, from the government agencies, and of course from the industry players. We also try to develop a better internship program so that students should be able to understand that, hey, when I finish this study, this is the area that I can go and do my internship and learn a lot more to gain the industry experience.
Hi, welcome everybody. Good afternoon from Malaysia. In line with the aviation theme, I'm actually taking this call from an airport. Very privileged to be able to moderate today. We have two great speakers and I'm really looking forward to hearing them share their thoughts with us. We have Captain Miwa. Captain Miwa is a corporate pilot based in Medford, Oregon. She currently flies a Challenger 601 business jet. Her career includes experience as a flight instructor, air ambulance pilot, as well as a commercial airline pilot. Captain Miwa was born and raised in Japan. After graduating from high school, she moved to the US to pursue her dream to become a professional pilot. Having studied at Central Washington University in professional piloting, she continued her education there and received a master's degree in industrial engineering technology with a focus on aviation safety management. She has received scholarships for a Cessna Citation Encore business jet type rating from the Cessna Corporation, and a Boeing 737 type rating from United Airlines. Captain Miwa began her flying career as a flight instructor. After receiving her citation type rating, she began flying as a corporate pilot. A few years later, she became an airline pilot for a regional airline in the US. She was furloughed for a year and a half and moved to Guam to fly a Westwind 2 air ambulance jet throughout Southeast Asia and the South Pacific. Captain Miwa left the airlines after nearly a decade of airline flying to raise a family. Captain Miwa returned to her roots as a corporate pilot, which gives her the flexibility to continue flying while raising her 2 children with a husband who's also a professional pilot for a major US airline. She makes appearances as a motivational speaker and enjoys talking with and mentoring the next generation of aviators. Thanks for joining us, Captain Miwa.
Thanks.
We also have with us Jeffrey Chiang. So Jeff is the Chief Operating Officer for the Asian Business Aviation Association, AsBAA, office in Hong Kong. Jeff is responsible for overseeing the operations of AsBAA, as well as liaising with AsBAA's Board of Governors, and will report to AsBAA's Board of Directors. Jeff started his business aviation career with AsiaJet's aircraft charter team, and soon after became involved with aircraft management sales. He held a leadership role at AsiaJet after its acquisition by Hong Kong Jet in late 2016, and his latest role prior to joining AsBAA was Senior Sales Manager for Hong Kong Jet and AsiaJet, where Jeff was responsible for aircraft management and aircraft charter sales. Jeff holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Economics, Politics and History from the University of Toronto, and a postgraduate certificate in law from City University of Hong Kong. Jeff is a solicitor in a Hong Kong law firm before he switched into business aviation. He remains a member of the Law Society of Hong Kong and currently holds a valid practicing certificate as well as a New Zealand private pilot's license. So thank you, Jeff, for joining us as well. At the outset, I think I would just like to say thank you to AsBAA and thank you to Women in Corporate Aviation Asia for organizing this event and for giving Captain Miwa and Jeff and myself the chance to be on this platform with you. Just a bit about myself. My name is Shelina. I am an aviation lawyer. So I cover everything from commercial to private to business aviation, including chartering, acquisition, finance. I'm also currently the secretary of the Malaysia Aerospace Industry Association. So I look at the aerospace aspects as well. So to kick off today's discussion, I would like to share with you a little bit of the latest statistics that we've been able to find. Shiro, if you could put the statistics up. Sorry, Shiro, can you put the slides on the flight number statistics? So just to set the scene, this has been a bad year for everyone, unfortunately, with the COVID-19 and lockdowns and the impact on various economies. It's been particularly bad for aviation as international borders remain under severe restrictions worldwide, and we see most borders, particularly in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific, remaining closed. So these are the quarterly numbers from Malaysia passenger traffic from 2018 to 2020. And you can see that Q2 2020 was a huge drop. It was a minus 97% drop year on year, Q2 2020 versus Q2 2019. And you can see a very slight increase in Q3 2020. Next slide, please. These are the projections from the Malaysian authorities that they expect 2021 passenger traffic to rebound by between 94.2% to 100.3% year on year, translating to approximately 52 to 53 million passengers. We assume airlines in Malaysia will deploy more seat capacity as international travel restrictions are lifted. And we expect an increase in average load factors of 60 to 67%. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and unfortunately, we're still dependent on several external factors that we have no control over. Firstly, what happens with the pandemic as we move forward, as well as the impact of the possible widespread use of vaccinations and whether that will result in more borders opening up and less controls on flights and travel. We're also dependent on public health measures. And I think the most important is that we're dependent on consumer behavior. So even if everything else, we've got the vaccinations, borders are open, are consumers feeling safe and confident enough to travel? Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of how different commercial airlines in the region have dealt with the impact. And you can see that there have been quite a lot of layoffs as well as salary cuts and unpaid leave. This is in Malaysia. You've got AirAsia Group, Malindo, Malaysia Airlines, and elsewhere in the region, you see massive massive employment cuts by Singapore Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, and Cathay Pacific as well. Next slide, please. Now we have some good news. These are based on IATA projections from November, which is the most recent projections. And China's domestic market is already recovered to pre-crisis levels, as in Q1 2020. In China and India, where you have airlines with large domestic markets and or large cargo operations, they're already performing better. And although airlines are lowering fares at the moment to stimulate demand, they're expected to be cash break even by the year end in China. And overall, the projection is that net losses in 2021 will be just under 1/4 of the losses that the industry has experienced in 2020. So we are seeing positive signs. And the last slide, please, Cheryl. And we see similar, I guess, if you could call it positive news for the global airline industry, where we see that overall revenue is expected to grow to $459 billion, whereas costs are only expected to rise by $61 billion. I think we're building and expecting that there's a lot of pent-up demand in all the markets, and we're hoping that once borders are open, once flights are operating, that this pent-up demand will translate into lots of passengers traveling. And of course, with the massive logistics effort of distributing vaccine around the world, we also expect to see the cargo side of the business growing and cargo revenues growing as well. So on that note, if I may invite Captain Miwa to kick off today. And Captain Miwa will be sharing with us some of her personal experience, how she got onto this journey to becoming a professional pilot, and share with us some of her thoughts that the rest of us can learn from and hopefully inspire the next generation of pilots. Over to you, Captain Miwa.
Thank you, Shiloh. Hi, everybody. My name is Miwa Aokiraso. I'm from Japan. Well, my story goes way back when I was very little, and most of the pilots I met that I recall that has the same dream as I am. I had that when I was little. I look up, over the sky, and I see the big 747 landing in the airport nearby my house. And I always wonder that the world that the airplane taking you from the tiny village, the tiny city that I was born and raised. And it just start having this, beautiful dream of going somewhere that I never been to. And on top of that, my grandfather wants to be a pilot, and he always saying that I wish you're a boy, you could be a pilot. And that just drives me crazy. And I wasn't sure why I have to be a boy to be a pilot. Just being said so, my dream started when I was very little, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. And ever since then, I really have a dream to be not just being a pilot, but being in the aviation industry in general. And that was my starting driving, dream to become a pilot. Back then, 1994, when I graduated high school, when I tried to graduate high school, there was no female pilots in Japan. And I'm not quite sure about over the other Asian country, but back then I tried to apply to become a pilot, but none of the school accepted me because there was no female bathroom or a locker room. And being me, teenager, I was too shy to ask more question. I always accepted the fact that there was no female pilot there. So my grandfather encouraged me to study abroad in the US. And back then, there were so many female pilots in the US. It was just overwhelming, the fact that how different from Japan and the US about the aviation. And still, I feel like we are still a little bit behind from US, but that's how I started my journey to become a pilot. And I came to this country without speaking English, and I studied English to begin with, which surprised me that all the pilots supposed to speak English, which I was so ignorant, I didn't even know. So that I studied there, and I went to school, and I got the aviation degree, and ever since then, all my life is in aviation, more than 25 years. And I'm just loving every single moment of being me in the aviation industry, to be connected with other dreamers, basically. And so that's my dream to become a pilot, how that started.
Thank you, Captain Miwa. Jeff, would you like to say a little bit about your experiences, and I think particularly from the AsBAA hat perspective in terms of an introduction to what you do and what you see around you today?
Sure. Thank you, Datin Shelina. So obviously, my name is Jeff. I just to kind of give everybody a quick overview. I used to be a solicitor in Hong Kong. I still am. I hold a practicing certificate. Law is very interesting, but I didn't quite see myself doing that long term. So I went into aviation. I started doing charter and then aircraft management, and now I'm with AsBAA. And as Ida was saying at the very beginning of the video, AsBAA represents its members in the wider industry through its 3 core pillars. The first one is advocacy, second is representation, and third one is community. We actively advocate for the benefits of business aviation to the key stakeholders, and also, of course, governments and transport ministries and other relevant parties like the media and whatnot. We try to basically promote the interest of the sectors, the interest of business aviation for all sectors, and we try to create a community within Asian Business Aviation Association, so that people can network, can leverage the B2B opportunities, and also to tackle common issues together with collective influence. I think overall, this year has been a tough year, to say the least. But I think, like Datin Shelina's slides have illustrated, and based on the data, I think we are seeing an uptick and a bounce back in terms of flight activity. And I think I think the worst is over. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Of course, like Datin Shelina said, I think there are still external factors that we have to take into account. The effectiveness of the vaccine, consumer behavior, and whatnot. But I think this is a good step forward. We're heading back in the right direction, and I'm hoping that aviation both commercial and business aviation and general aviation can pick up and flourish once again.
Thanks, Jeff. No, I think we're all hoping for the same thing. So it's the end of the year, time for New Year's resolutions. So let's hope that 2021 is a better year all around. Just bringing us back to the topic of today's discussion. The title is Agility in Crisis. What should we do to make a difference in the aviation industry? There are many ways that we can make a difference. And I think the diversity of what Captain Miwa and Jeff are talking about today just gives you an indication of the fact that there are different ways to participate and contribute to the discussion and dialogue and contribute to actually making a difference. And while we are on that theme, Captain Miwa, would you like to share with us any messages or, because you are a motivational speaker, would you like to share with us some messages or encouragement to anyone who's considering a career as a pilot, whether they're fresh out of school or it's another female who may have been told, I wish you were a boy, therefore you could be a pilot. So what do you say to that?
Yes, China. First of all, now any students, pilots, or anybody who want to be getting into the aviation industry, just to let you guys know that it's a very beautiful time, the matter of the mentoring system. Look at these organizations, and myself, I feel like I was alone in this journey, and I met so many great mentors through the women in aviation, women in corporate aviation in the US. I myself trying to have my own team to mentoring each other. Use those resources. First of all, that was the bottom line. Everybody trying to help you and everybody trying to encourage you. So being said so, getting into the aviation industry, I definitely encourage for the female. Being about 10 years as a teacher in an aviation program, or the instructors, I taught at the university for 10 years. Female suits in a cockpit, period. And one of the examples that I always use to my students to encourage is that female is very good for multitasking. No offense to the male, but you look at your mother cooking in the kitchen, thinking about the next day's chore or the shopping list, or calling somebody on the phone, but at the same time taking care of the baby. Those are all multitasking. That's what we need in the cockpit. And we are very good at it, those kind of stuff. So don't let any male discourage to become a pilot. And first of all, nowadays, 21st century, all the cockpits are very user-friendly. And then used to be, well, I have to take that back, sometimes you have to drive or fly the very old airplanes and you need a muscle. So those kind of airplanes that, it's a little bit disadvantage, my experience. But nowadays, if you're going to start off from the college in the aviation industry, most of the technology, you're not going to need any, muscular. So being said so, I really encourage all the female pilots to join us. Nothing different from male. So don't discourage yourself just because you're female. And another things that I like to talking about is, if you want to be a pilot, why don't you try at least once? It's called the introduction flight. If you go to flight school, or I'm not quite sure your country, but if you have an opportunity to give yourself a smaller lesson, just to try out. You've been dreaming about to become a pilot, but it might not be for you, but it might be for you. For me, for my first flight, tiny Cessna 150, that sold me, that my soul was already, sold to become a pilot. I dreamed myself being in this cockpit, and the view for the sunset was amazing. I'm sure that you guys have beautiful, gorgeous scenics in Malaysia. And I really encourage you to do that. That motivates you to have that kind of the office view for rest of your life, that's just like precious. So please keep dreaming, and if you need support, seek the support. You guys have a wonderful organization there, and we are female pilots in the US. We are there for you guys as well too. So keep in touch.
Thank you, Captain Miwa. I think that's great. I'm sure after this webinar, we're going to see a whole lot of introductory flights go up. One more question, because I think this is something that comes up with women more so than men again. I'm not sure why, but it does. What is the impact that your career as a professional pilot has had on your family life? I know you're passionate about your family, and you mentioned to us on the Monday call that you find this gives you work-life balance. Maybe you could share that, because I'm sure some women out there, they do worry about the work-life aspect.
Definitely. This is a very key issue. Believe it or not, I'm a totally different person than when I was single. I never thought about myself, getting married or have a kids. I'm one of those pilots who wanted to fly the rest of my life. That was my life. I don't know anything else except to fly an airplane. But once you had a moment and then have a opportunity to raise the family, it's a beautiful thing ever. And then my airplane become my second nature. And then my family comes first. So being said so, I truly like to share my experience. If you want to be a pilot and raise a family, please don't hesitate yourself to speak your concern to the company. Raise your voice first. Including myself, even the US, we are female rights is very protected in this country. And we have 2% of female pilots at most of the airline industry. I'm speaking out of an airliner at this moment, but raise your voice will start helping the country to change the regulations and so on, because they don't know how difficult to keep flying when you were 7 months pregnant, or once you have a baby born, 3 months to go back to work, leaving your kids, or you have to do breast pumping in the cockpit with a male captain next to it. Or for me, airliner, I have to do quick turn. You have to go right into the terminal to the bathroom to breast pumping. That's just not quite understandable by male. So we, as a female pilot, we last 20 or actually 15 years or so in the US, we are raising the voice and trying to encourage other female pilots to raise the voice. So that's the first thing. Don't be, it's hard in Asian country. I'm sure I know with my background, but that's the first things that you have to have encourage yourself to do it. The second things I want to say is it's adorable. Of course, if you have a family members or friends to help you to raise the kids while you're working, that would be amazing. But my case, my family is in Japan. My husband's family is in Japan. I don't have a grandparents to help me, to raise my kids. So we have to take a turn. And my husband is also the airline pilot. So we have to have we had a hard time to juggle our schedule, but it worked. And it worked in an extent. And we get to the point where we don't get to see each other. So that's going to be another problem for the marriage life. So I decided to leave the airline industry. Am I regret it? Beginning, I was kind of sad to leave the 10, 15 years of career as an airliner. But once I come back to this corporate aviation, the private jet industry, this is perfect opportunity for female pilots, because we sell most of the pilots in the US, we sell as a contract pilots. So you value yourself, a skill, and you go to work daily basis. So in the airline, if you are airline pilots, it's a little bit difficult because you don't get to have a part-time job gig. In the US, we don't. I'm not sure about the Asian country, but it have to be the full-time job. So it's very hard for the female in a way. But the private jet or corporate jet, it's a little bit more flexibility there for my understanding. It's so so I really like to encourage that the female students who want to be a pilot to consider the corporate aviation or private aviation. I did not know anything about it when I was a student. So here you are, once again, you got so much opportunity for the information out there and get support. So I think, that was my concern a long time, but I'm not afraid. I think the age in experience will be more helpful at this time for me to speak up. When you're young and vulnerable, it's hard to do it. But once again, together with this using organization, we can do it. So don't be afraid in the future. And once again, female are suitable in the cockpit.
Thanks, Captain Miwa. Now, I know we've got quite a few students who are listening in on this webinar. So we hope that you will take Captain Miwa's advice and encouragement to heart. And there's lots of ways of doing it. You can be a pilot, you can be an engineer. There's so many ways, but let's get in there. And Captain Miwa, I think you're right. We shouldn't let anyone tell us, and this applies to men and women really, we shouldn't let anyone tell us what we can and cannot do, whether they are of the same gender or a different gender, and we should just go for it. Thank you very much. Jeff, if I could come back to you. So from the business side of things, how do you see the business sentiment for business aviation moving forward? Maybe you could share with us a bit of any insights you've had since the lockdown started in March to now, and where you see the industry landscape going over the next, say, 6 to 12 months.
Sure. So obviously, the crisis has had a very negative impact on the industry. But I think overall the long-term outlook is very positive. Business aviation, I think, throughout this crisis has shown to governments and media that it can play a very critical and important role in the delivery of PPE, medical equipment, repatriation of citizens, and even delivering supplies to places where remote communities are located. So I think this does put business aviation and general aviation in a positive light. And I think long term, I think people will begin to realize the benefits of business aviation. It's obviously been very difficult for the industry and for a lot of our members. With business aviation, flights basically coming to a standstill. Nobody flying, and with countries locking down, I think that has impacted a lot of the operators, aircraft management companies, ground handlers. So I think, I don't think many companies were spared. I think, the only ones that were relatively stable in terms of business would probably be the MROs. Obviously, the airplanes will still need to be maintained during this period. So I think MROs probably had a slightly easier time, but of course, nonetheless, I think everybody was heavily affected by this. But I think the silver lining is that people are beginning to see how useful business aviation can be, and I think we saw a surge in charter flights. I think it was back in March and April, right before a lot of the countries in Asia locked down. So we saw a surge in charter flights, repatriation of citizens or even just trying to find a way home when commercial airlines were cutting capacity or canceling flights, etc. So I think after this, the dust settles. and we return to a sense of normality, I think the future is very bright. I think we will see an uptick in possibly people acquiring aircraft, and of course also using chartering business aircraft as well, because they may see the benefits in having a more secure and safe and private environment. Obviously less touch points compared to commercial aviation. So I think overall, it will be a slow transition out of this this slump, but I think it is, like I was saying before, it is going in the right direction, and it will take a while before before all the countries fully open up, all the quarantine and travel restrictions are lifted to a certain extent, and people are back up in the air flying. But I think we can expect, long term, or at least in the immediate future, that health checks, quarantines, these will probably be the norm. But hopefully, with the introduction of the vaccine, that will make things a little bit more bearable and a little bit more smooth. From an operational point of view, obviously there's still a lot of tricky issues getting in and out of certain countries. Places like Japan, I believe that they're still closed to foreigners. I believe that's the case for Singapore as well. China, flying in on business jets is virtually impossible unless you have the involvement of the Department of Foreign Affairs. But I think these are only temporary restrictions. And I think these are restrictions that are helpful to curb the spread of the coronavirus. But I think moving forward, the future is very bright. And like going back to what Miwa was saying, Captain Miwa was saying, I think don't let this deter anybody from entering the aviation industry. This is just a temporary setback. I think the future is bright. There's a lot of opportunities moving ahead, especially in Asia, in Southeast Asia, where I think that will probably be the main growth driver out of Asia in the future. And don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. Miwa is a perfect example of what persistence and passion can result in. And likewise, Datin Shelina, Ida, I mean, we have amazing women here contributing to society and to aviation. And I think if there's anything, I think with change, I think you can either be bitter or you can become better. And I think with this temporary setback, everybody can find a way to become a better person.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I see you've got a few questions, but just one more question for you, Jeff, before we go to the questions that are coming in from the viewers. So you mentioned that one of the main roles of AsBAA is advocacy. Correct. And you also said that one of the reasons there was this initial surge of charter flights is people feel more secure and safe in a private environment. So I'm just wondering, from a business aviation perspective, what are the things that we should do as an industry, whether in Malaysia or Singapore or Hong Kong, to make sure that, once commercial airlines come back on track, that we don't go back onto the back burner? How do we make sure that business aviation stays at the forefront with that message that we're safe and secure, we're private, you can fly with 8 people instead of 180 people you don't know? How do we keep that message out there?
I think it's really about education and promotion of the business aviation industry and general aviation industry as a whole. Just on the business aviation side, just addressing your question, Datin Shelina, I think it's really about educating the governments, letting them know, hey, throughout this crisis, we're able to help, support or supplement the commercial airlines by delivering, essential aid supplies to remote communities, when scheduled commercial services may not be that frequent. Could be delivering essential PPE, repatriation of citizens, even when it comes to the vaccines. From what I understand, because the vaccines need to be stored at such low temperatures, maybe there's a need, for business aviation to come into play with, sort of specialized equipment, where maybe some of the cargo airlines, don't have this capacity. Business aviation will be able to step in. So I think it's about engaging dialogue and continuing dialogue with the governments to let them know how business aviation can supplement the commercial aviation and also help the country itself grow. Because I think at the end of the day, we also have to remind the governments that business aviation is not really estimated by the number of passenger flow through a particular terminal, or it's not really calculated by duty-free sales. It's really the background of what we do. It's what we do in the background. I mean, so business aviation is an economic driver. It creates jobs. It's an efficiency tool for people and for businesses to do businesses, to do meetings quickly and effectively. And it's also a way to bring in foreign investment. So these are the things that I think we need to kind of keep hammering in to let the governments know that, yes, commercial airlines will have its place, and it will never, business aviation will never replace commercial aviation. But there's no, it's not to say that business aviation cannot also stand alongside commercial aviation when it comes to priority, when it comes to attention. It's not all about the glitzy, ritzy, flying on the business jets. It is actually people, companies using it for genuine business purposes, and we want to highlight that, and not to let the governments know that this is actually what business jets are genuinely used for. And I think the same for the general aviation part as well. I think we should let the governments know that there is a pool of young, the younger generation that are interested in civil aviation. In general aviation. Invest more in flight schools, in flight training programs. This is how we can grow sort of the general aviation scene in Asia. Maybe instead of Miwa going to the US to do the training, she could have done it in Japan, or wherever. I think it's because of this lack of infrastructure, or lack of the general aviation investments, which results in a lot of people going overseas to the US, to Europe, to do flight training, when we can actually do it in Asia, in Malaysia. I mean, I'm sure Malaysia would be a beautiful country to fly in. So I think it's also about educating the government to do a little bit more on the general aviation side as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. No, I think that's a very good point. WCAA, AsBAA Malaysia, those of you who are on the call, please take note. Maybe this is the right opportunity for BA and GA to shout out about ourselves, as governments are rushing to put in plans, logistics, and all these things for the vaccine. Maybe, as Jeff says, this is precisely the right time for us to say that, hey, there is a need for us, and there's a role, there's a gap, because these big freighters won't be able to land on some of those small airports that we have in Malaysia, and I'm sure that's the case for other, countries in Asia Pacific, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines. So there is a role, and I think this is the right opportunity. We need to step up, and we need to, take it by the reins and say that we're going to do it. And it also shows, I think, that we can be proactive. We can be proactive about this. So I'll take the first question from Miguel Samong, and I think Yes, so here's the question. I think both of you could answer part of it, really. In the event the aviation industry is back on its feet, companies would reconsider hiring employees. It's most likely they would hire past employees that were retrenched. Where would that put our fresh graduates who are seeking an opportunity, and is it still worth the wait? So perhaps Captain Miwa can go first, and then Jeff, if you can talk about some of your past experience,
Sure.
about employees, airline employees who may have been retrenched. Captain Miwa?
Yes, honestly, I cannot answer 100% for sure, but my advice for the newcomers, new students, pilots seeking to become a pilot or any kind of a job in the industry is this is not going to be the first one and last one in the industry to deal with this kind of crisis. It's going to be happen like this. Myself, oil crisis, 2009, I lost my job. I was furloughed for 2 years. But the thing is, you can't just live the life of wondering about that kind of stuff. You really have to concentrate on what you can do at this moment, and whether the company is going to rehire the former employee. Most likely they should, I think. And newcomer, new pilots wannabe, they should focus on the improving their skills and resume, and do some kind of a humanity work, because being a pilot is not just flying the airplane. Well, you might be able to do that kind of job in the airline industry, possible, just to fly the A to B without talking to anybody. But if you are seeking the job in the private or corporate or most of the job in this industry, you have to have a people skill as well. So there's so many things you can improve while you're wondering and scary about the future. But honestly, I was one of you guys, so I really understand. But the thing is, coming from my experience, don't waste your time on those, because it's gonna happen, and I cannot promise that they're never gonna happen to you. It might. So what I suggest to do is work on your training, gain your skill, and work on the risk management. Get your degree, work on your English skill, work on your people skills. Do as much as you can while you need to do, because I think that that's the best advice from my experience. When I lost my job 2009, I was devastated. I just got the job, and I just got to finally be able to fly the big airplane. And then I lost the job like right off the hook, and I was the first one to go. I was sad maybe 3 days, and I started looking for the opportunity for other than US. It was tough, but at the same time, there was another opportunity, which was in Guam, which I really don't know where Guam was or what kind of job waiting for me. But I was be able to do the air ambulance job, which I never knew that I would do. And that gave me a lot of confidence, a lot of experience, a lot of different skill other than being a pilot. And this became who I am. So every opportunity, every moment that you feel like you are scared or scare moment, just enjoy the scare feeling for maybe 3 days and move on, and seeking for something bright side and positive, and do as much as you can at that moment. That's my advice coming from me.
Thanks, Captain Miwa. That's good advice. Jeff, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, sure. So I think, just to give, Miguel is asking where would fresh graduates who are seeking an opportunity, would it be worth the wait? I think, I think it is, worth the wait. I think it really comes down to how passionate you are about the industry, about how badly do you want it. Obviously there will be inevitably there will be setbacks, throughout life. I think the important thing is to kind of sit down, step back, evaluate, and prioritize what you think is important to you and what you want to do in life. I mean, before, when I was a solicitor in Hong Kong, my passion has always been in aviation as well. Ever since I was a kid, of course, because of maybe because of family pressure, I kind of went into law. But my passion was always in aviation. So, I actually tried to apply to Cathay Pacific's cadet pilot program back in the day with no experience, no flying experience. I didn't get in. And then I applied again with a little bit of flying experience. I didn't get in. And then when I left my legal career, I actually went to New Zealand to finish off my PPL, finish my hours, do all my training and all my exams. I got it there. And then the plan was actually to go into to become a commercial pilot with Cathay Pacific. So with the PPL, I applied again. That also didn't work out, despite thinking, third time being a charm, but, obviously not. But, one thing led to another. It is what it is. I was very unhappy at the time, but look where it's brought me. I've met amazing people. I'm able to be on this webinar with Miwa and Datin Shelina and Ida here. And, it's taken me in a whole different direction. But it's still within aviation. So back to Miguel's question, I think it is worth the wait. But while you're waiting, don't just sit there and don't do anything. I think the most important thing is keep pursuing what you want to do. Maybe find ways to meet more people in the particular industry, get a little bit more experience about what work is actually like, and find ways to upskill. Find new ways to, whether it's through internships, which obviously AsBAA Discovery can help with, or whether it's even speaking to, to mentors, finding mentors like Datin Shelina, aviation law, Captain Miwa, Ida, Women in Corporate Aviation Asia is here to help you. AsBAA Discovery is here to help you. So, do not be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Everybody's happy to help and give advice. But I think the one thing that you shouldn't be doing is sitting back and kind of sitting on your sitting back and waiting for an opportunity to come onto your lap.
No, that's a good point, Jeff. I think you're right. You have found a way to stay connected to aviation. I used to be with a major low-cost carrier when I left. I was general counsel. When I left, I had a few offers to go into corporate law, but this little voice kept telling me that you should stay in aviation. So I ended up doing aviation law. Although now I do a bit of aerospace as well. And, I think just something to point out, as Captain Miwa said, you've been through a crisis before. This isn't the first. This won't be the last. But something that we should remember is that historically, aviation and aerospace industries have always bucked the trend. They are the last to go down, and they are normally the first to climb back up. And the reason is simple. People need to travel. Cargo needs to travel. So there's always going to be a demand. It's just a question of being in the right place at the right time. And I think you're right. We can't wait for the opportunities to come along. We need to pick ourselves up and get prepared for whatever comes around the corner. And on the heels of that point, this brings me to the next question from Muhammad Azlan Amran. Is there any way to help retrenched airline pilots? Since the cargo logistics airlines industry is still okay, can they work in that industry instead as cargo plane pilot? And just before we start on that, I think Ida updated us on Monday. There's more than 2,000 unemployed commercial pilots currently in Malaysia. So, and I'm sure it's the case in a lot of other countries. Cathay Dragon laid off so many. So how do we keep them in the industry, and how do we help them pivot maybe from, commercial passenger airlines into cargo or logistics? Do they need to consider things such as getting a conversion course? Maybe you could share some of your experiences here. Go ahead, if you could share.
Oh, is that me? So I'm sorry, the logistic airlines, I'm not quite familiar of the terms.
No, I think logistics is the same as cargo.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they're asking that being the commercial airline pilots to convert it to the cargo pilots, or even corporate or private. Is that what they're asking?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, cargo is always the key for the pilot if you want to keep the job all the time. Cargo never goes. That's the things that we always say as a joke. So if you don't mind flying middle of the night, that's what they do for the slot, for the parking slot, for the gate and everything. Usually the airline industry, the commercial airline fly during the daytime, but the cargo fly the middle of the night. So that's a totally different lifestyle that you need to know. And versus this is something very important that I learned, that we are all pilots and we know how to fly the airplanes. Most of the pilots, we are all professional to get where we are. We train well, we get type rating, but different kind of pilot's job for cargo, airline, especially the corporate, private pilots, the skill that we require is not as a flying airplanes. Require the people skills, customer service skills, how they call it, post-flight requirements. So cargo is, I guess, very easy for the term. You have to bring the non-human material from A to B. If you can bear flying middle of the night. And airline commercial pilots sort of easy as well, because you just have to fly the airplane from A to B point safely. But corporate aviation or private industry here, what we deal is very demanding skill that you are asked. Not just flying airplanes, you need to have a people skills. You need to have the out of box think of way in a cockpit, because owner change the route all the time, middle of the nowhere, and you have to kind of like comply with it. So being said, so the job has a different requirement. So I would say that you need to have information what suits you, and sometimes suit you is not the option. Most of the time you have to make a living. So you have to take whatever the job you are asked to do so, but be aware that the flying skill is not the only requirement. So from me converting from the airline industry to, you think it's easy to go cargo, easy to go private, it's not that easy, just for the job change. But flying skill, it will be probably the same.
Thanks, Captain Miwa. We'll move on to the next question from Peter Tan. In your opinion, should there be any resetting on the salary scale for the pilots and crews, ground staffs, etc., post-COVID? Also, some training courses in overseas might be cheaper than the local. On the first question, I'm not sure, Peter, if you're on the line, maybe you can add in a comment. What do you mean by resetting? Do you mean we should reconsider because they have more responsibilities in the new norm in terms of operations? Some training courses in overseas might be cheaper than the local. From my personal experience, I understand that the basic cost of training when you're using a sim or when you're using certain classes is actually comparable in different countries. But what is the difference is things like, accommodation and transport. So I'm not sure if that would make a huge difference to the cost. But Peter, please, if you could give us a bit more clarity on the first bit about resetting salaries so that we can respond to that. A couple more questions. With respect to future outlook and future prospects for the industry, and I think both of you would have different input to this question. What do you see as the key difference, or key differences really, of commercial airlines versus business aviation? I.e., do we see them both recovering together at the same time? Do we see business aviation? Do we think business aviation is going to pick up a little bit faster? And also from the pilot's perspective, Captain Miwa, what do you think? And of course, Jeff, from your business perspective and observations, what do you think the future outlook and future prospects look like?
I'm going to go first. So once again, I'm not in the any sort of management position, so I'm not quite sure the statistic, and I don't want to guessing game answer. But what I see here in the U.S. After COVID and now after almost a year now, or almost a year, my experience is the airline, it has a union. So that being said, so like my husband works in a major airline in the US, and first when COVID hit, we are very, very scared because 35%, that was, we are told that 65% shrinking the flying route. So my husband hasn't flown ever, probably February, and he's on a reserve. That's how much the crazy time right now. And thankfully for the union and all the government trying to support the aviation industry to go under, we have a job, we have an income. So that's amazing for me being in the US. Me as a corporate pilot, we lost most of the job when COVID hit. The reason for that is this unknown virus scare most of the owners and most of the businessmen. And this is the new style of the business. What we call is Zoom meeting. So a lot of the owners start doing the Zoom meeting from the house, and they don't fly their private jet, or they don't use the business jet. So I didn't have any job for a while. From May to June, they start picking up a little bit. What happened was according to the owner, or what I heard was so much that they can do on the Zoom, even though it sounds very practical and a very cost efficiency. Business world, which I'm not in it, but I was told that face-to-face talking create the connections and networking, and sometimes it's very important for the management people to see and meet and talk face-to-face instead of over the internet or the online. So they start picking up from the May to June, and I have a job since then. And now they are saying that it's much safer to fly the private jet or a corporate jet compared to the airline, because basically we skip the terminal. Terminal is the most dangerous place to get the COVID. That's what a lot of media was saying in the US. So here we provide the best safe environment for the most of the owners. We get to sanitize all the airplanes ready to go. We create the environment where most of the owners are safe to fly. They get to the business meeting, and we take them back home without going anywhere else. So I would say that corporate industry or private jet industry has a lot of more quick recovery than the airline. That's my opinions. But once again, the airline industry is coming back slowly. And once again, that we keep telling this, but this kind of stuff is come and go all the time. And the aviation industry have to be strong, or will be strong, because without aviation, there's no future. Everybody knows that. It's just if you think about it, it's a common sense. So globalizations, has spread nowadays that importance of aviation have to be considered. So have to come back.
Yeah, thanks, Captain Miwa. And I think you're right there. Even the United Nations acknowledges that economic development has a positive correlation to air connectivity. So the higher the air connectivity for any particular place, you see a higher propensity for economic development. And particularly because it's a global stage, I think, because we do have people traveling from all over the world, wanting to go all over the world. And, would it surprise you that less than 2% of the world's population has been in an airplane? So can you imagine 98% of the world's population, of course this is on a blended average, has never been on an airplane. So there's a lot of, there's a huge market out there. We just have to figure out how to get to it, I think. Okay, Peter has just come back to clarify. Okay, revised salary scale due to economy of scales, many overseas training centers can offer a better rate than local, for example, flying schools. Yeah, I think Peter, you're right there. I think Jeff, you mentioned earlier, right, that maybe these are things that the aviation industry, not just business aviation, but aviation industry as a whole can look at, whether it's possible to set up more flying schools in countries such as Malaysia and in Southeast Asia. I think a few months ago we had cases of pilots from the Middle East who needed to do some recurrent training. They could not go to the US because of the prevalence of cases there. They wanted to come to Malaysia, but Malaysia was under border control. So yeah, we need to figure out a way through this. Thanks, Peter. And sorry, before I forget, and before Ida reminds me, we actually have a prize, which is a bracelet with an airplane charm for the best question today, for the most interesting question. So I don't have a picture of the charm, but it's very pretty. I saw it just now. I just don't have a picture. So if any of you would like to have a go at winning that charm, please try and think of some interesting question to pose to Captain Miwa and Jeff today. Sorry, Jeff, would you like to add anything to the earlier question about how do we see future prospects for commercial aviation and business aviation?
Sure. I think, just further to Miwa's point, I think business aviation will bounce back quicker than commercial aviation, just because I think business aviation as a whole is a little bit more flexible. Obviously, we don't have as many passengers per trip. The operations can be more flexible. So I think everything can be a little bit more agile in that sense. We even going through, let's say doing a flight, passengers would go through the FBOs, as opposed to the commercial terminals where typically, there would be more a higher chance of contracting, COVID, just because of the number of people within the airport terminal itself. But with an FBO, it's a lot more private, it's a lot more secure. And I think obviously the planes are also, the business jets are also disinfected, pre, after, and before every flight. And because of the smaller numbers, I think there is a tendency for people to use this more as a method of transportation. And I think, it's interesting to see that. I think globally, I think in terms of the recovery, I think the recovery is inversely related with the cabin size. So I think, small business jets are less affected than the ultra long range aircraft, just because people are beginning, let's say within Europe, within the US, people are beginning to see, okay, wow, I'd rather go through a small airport like Teterboro as opposed to going to JFK. So then they would use these FBOs to do shorter trips, and it's and I think it makes sense because in the US and Europe, obviously because of the infrastructure, because of the costs. It's generally cheaper to fly, private in the US and in Europe compared to Asia. But I think this also means there's a lot of room for Asia to grow. I mean, for the governments to invest in infrastructure, to do more airports, all this kind of stuff, so that we can, I suppose, in a way, democratize business aviation. And I think this is where AsBAA comes in, because AsBAA is focused on increasing membership, so that we can help the general, basically all the industry players, lobby against the government, a collective voice, so that we can propel change. We can have a bigger voice within our industry or within the government when we speak to them.
Thanks, Jeff. Just continuing along that theme, I guess one of the issues that perhaps business aviation, because yes, Asia is growing, but it's still a very small market compared to the Americas and Europe. What do you think, from your perspective, are unique propositions that Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines can offer from a business aviation perspective?
So I think from with Southeast Asia, because of how vast the country is, obviously obviously not compared to the US, but I mean it's Malaysia is a very big country as well. Philippines as well. I mean, there's tiny islands. Everything is very spread out, and not to mention traffic's an absolute nightmare. So I think business aviation, even general aviation, can play an important role. When it comes to businesses wanting to do short hops to from KL to KK, or KL to even the smaller places, smaller secondary cities or third tier cities, to do, whether it's for business, or whether it's like a site visit. I think so. So I think overall, I think there is a lot of potential for growth in the general aviation industry, because a lot of these destinations from a commercial airline point of view, it might not make sense to start services there, just because there's not enough capacity, or it just doesn't justify using like an ATR or whatever, or a 737 or A319 to fly to these places, just because there's no demand. But there's just enough demand to justify using general aviation or business aviation to serve these these places.
I think one of the issues, Jeff, that we face is that sometimes when people think of business aviation, and you mentioned this much earlier on the call, is that, and Captain Miwa, you mentioned this too, people say business aviation and they think of very plush, expensive, fitted out jets, without thinking of the more practical aspects. So, this is where I think the advocacy and awareness that we talked about comes in, so that we can emphasize the practical benefits instead of just focusing on the plushness. Although, yes, I think private jets are very nice to fly in all the same. Sorry, this question just came in. Hi, Jeff, what is your view between the industries and universities? So maybe this is to do with, whether the graduates that are coming out of universities and other educational institutions, is that in line with what the industry needs? And, Captain Miwa, I think maybe you have some views on this too. So are we at the right balance in terms of the graduates and the students coming out and what the industry needs, or are they misstep to each other?
May I go first?
Sure.
So once again, I'm speaking out of US, speaking of experience in US. Definitely there's going to be the shortage of pilots. Definitely. So we don't have enough students, pilots in the US to be able to sustain this, to support or work for in the aviation industry. it's nothing like before. My time or my mentor's time has been so different nowadays that the company is sponsoring high school students to encourage to go to the aviation university. Some of the company, the big airliner is giving the money for the training. Never ever happened in the history of in aviation in the U.S. Being said so, it's gonna be a lot of shortage. We know it's gonna be a lot of shortage, but what happened is because of the cost of the trainings, because of we talking about this industry is up and down all the time, unstable. So not many young generation are encouraged to get into this industry. It's very unstable. Unless you have a passion, just like we all three of us keep saying that we have to have a passion to be in this industry. That's the key word. And so in America, airline endorsing the high school kids to go aviation degrees, and then term of the guarantee the job right after the certain hours. So it's gonna change. And yes, definitely, it's going to be a lot of demand for new generation to come. One thing I was concerned, like me, I have a son who wanna fly someday, but he's only 6 years old, and right now with 2 pilots in the cockpit. In the future, who knows? Drones comes in, robots comes in, and so my time probably we still have a need of pilots. But in the future, technologies, it's gonna be, amazing, and we as a pilots probably sitting on the ground controlling, remote control. Who knows? But for that matter, I cannot say too much. But for a while, yes, we do need to have pilots in a cockpit for safety purpose and regulation purpose. I'm sure, insurance purpose. There's so many safety layers, to get to the point where no man aircraft, which is, in the US, we already testing, some of the places, but I think it's going to be a while. So for now, the teenager who wants to go to the college and looking for the job right after the school, I would say, yes, please, don't be afraid. You guys going to have a demand, at least for this side of for the country.
Yeah.
No, I think I think Captain Miwa, you're right. We're seeing the projections all show that there will be a shortage of pilots in the future. Jeff, please, your views on how do we ensure that industry and academia or any kind of training really is matched up, and that we're able to produce not just the right numbers, but I think the right kind of graduates and trainees that the industry needs to grow.
Yeah, so I think, again, I completely agree with what you said, Datin Shelina, and of course Miwa as well. I think there is definitely a continuous need for pilots, but I think we also want to let the graduates know and the younger generation know that there's also more to the aviation industry than just pilots. There's also all the other aviation, the people in aviation that make up this industry. There's cabin crew, ground service people, customer service, client relations, flight dispatchers, all these people. And I think, I don't think there's much to worry about. I think if you're passionate, I think this is the key word here. I think if you're passionate about aviation, then go for it. It's, of course, it's going to be, it can be a difficult road just because it can be unstable. Obviously, with what we've seen with COVID, things can change, in an instant. But I think if you're persistent, there's always, there's bound to be a rebound. Things will bounce back. The industry will flourish again. Looking at when you compare the U.S., where there's over 12,000 general aviation aircraft. And when you compare it to Asia, I mean, Asia is a drop, in this, in terms of the numbers. I think in terms of business jets, if I'm not wrong, I believe there's only about 12 or maybe about 1,500 business jets in Asia, whereas I think there's over 12,000 in the US. Mm-hmm. So obviously with Asia itself, there's still a lot of potential for growth. I mean, with the way that, how the countries are spread out, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, all the Pacific islands. So I think I'm not too worried about there not being enough jobs. I think it's really about finding the right role for the right person. And I think it's good to explore what you want to do when you're young, which is why we have mentors, like Captain Miwa, like Datin Shelina, like Ida, myself. We're here to give advice. Even other members of the industry, Women in Corporate Aviation Asia as well, AsBAA. This is the whole point of why we started Discovery, is because we want to groom the younger generation into aviation, so that there's a continuous supply of people interested in aviation who can take over these positions when we grow old. And I think it is about just educating.
Oh yeah, I think we agree with you there, Jeff. Good question. Thank you from Putri Nur Shaza. And there are two related questions, and this relates to something, Captain Miwa, you mentioned earlier about the future having drones. So an interesting fact: Malaysia, there's Aerodyne is a Malaysian company, and I believe it's the second largest drone company in the world right now. So that's something that Malaysia has to be proud of. Two related questions. The first by Tomohiro Tanaka, who asked, what do you see in the future of aviation, whether influenced by COVID or not, as to transportation of people in a smaller fleet like air taxi? And from Ravindran Subramaniam, the future is unmanned aircraft for sure, good or bad being anyone's guess. So maybe the two of you have had some experience or exposure to discussions or debates on this, if you'd like to share with us.
For term of the air taxi, for my personal opinion, and in this industry for a while, definitely has a future in the air taxi for me, as well as I like to say about this private and corporate aviation will be the key. Every time Jeff talking about, he mentioned two things all the time: potential, and every time he said that, it's so give me a goosebump. It's so exciting to think about the Asia growing in aviation, because aviation have to grow. That's just the period, the bottom line. And just like, we have to grow space industry, the same thing. It's just the technology, and then, we can't just, ignore the fact that the aviation is a very key factor for any other industry as well. And air taxi or private jet or business jet, those kind of business will give you a lot of flexibility. And in the needs of flexibility and different diversity of these crises in the future, we really have to be flexible for the clients. So air taxi has a little bit more flexibility than the I'm sure the regulation wise as well as the customers service. So for me, I can see definitely in Asia, the air taxi will be, all over the undeveloped countries, and then there's a potential, and then I can see that happening in the future. Who knows how long that it's gonna take, but it's not exciting to think about it. A lot of air taxi all over the Asia, and maybe flying the, low-time pilots, trying to gain more experience, because they're more humble to give the best customer service. And, you never know. So I would say definitely for the air taxi.
Thanks, Captain Miwa. And Jeff, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. So I think I agree with Captain Miwa. I think it's about innovation, technological advancements. So I think it's just a matter of time that there will be air taxis. We only have 24 hours a day, and this has been like this for ages. So I think we want to maximize. Companies will want to maximize. How much they can do within a day. So smaller fleets like air taxis. These autonomous, vehicles, like you said, Aerodyne. These are things. I think this will be the way forward. Not to say that the human will be replaced, but there's also room for technology alongside with us because it helps humans become more effective, whether it's to do their jobs or whether it's for business purposes. And I think people will strive for improvements in air transport. And I think the next step forward in that sense will be, the drones and air taxis.
Thank you, Jeff. So I've just been informed that we're reaching the end. So if I may just summarize, I've tried to summarize some of the key points that you shared. So Captain Miwa, you reminded everyone, don't let anyone stop you. And I think that applies to both genders. Women make great pilots as we can multitask well, and pilots need to multitask. In your experience, being a corporate pilot has allowed you to have a pretty good work-life balance. You don't think that this COVID crisis will be the last crisis the aviation industry will see? We've been through many before. And what is key is that we need to adapt and be willing to do as much as we can. Don't just wait for the opportunities. We have to take positive action. You believe the USA will have a shortage of pilots moving forward, and that's why there are bigger companies giving scholarships for training. So it is still a good industry to go into. And you believe that there's so much potential in aviation, especially in Asia. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
You summarize very well. And I only speak from my experience, and I'm not in the management or anything.
No, that's fine.
Closer. I just the pilots and who live in the dream. Once again, I last 28 years, I never ever get bored being in a cockpit. And every single time I'm very thankful, and I'm so glad that I started at early age and to get who I am. So definitely I encourage a lot of new generation to come to our industry and share our passion. It's just so much fun.
Well, we can see your passion coming right through, and we thank you so much for sharing your insights and your experiences with us today. Jeff, if I could try and summarize some of the key points that you talked about. First of all, you said that there is a need to improve advocacy, education, and awareness of the roles that BA and GA has played during this COVID crisis, particularly in the distribution of PPE, especially in smaller locations, repatriation flights, and bringing medical supplies and medical personnel. And these are things that we need to shout out about for the industry. There's a need to keep the awareness at the forefront to remind governments and everyone in general that BA and GA offers a more secure, safe, and private environment for those of us who do still need to travel. You said that business aviation isn't just a means of transport. It drives jobs, it drives the economy, and it's a tool of efficiency, particularly for smaller, far apart locations, which just is not served by commercial aviation. And it's also a way to bring in foreign investment. Also, that BA and GA are more agile, more flexible, and better able to adapt. And customers, passengers get a sense of security that they go through an FBO and not the main terminal. You believe that there's still lots of room in Asia to grow, and that there's still lots of opportunity, and this may be the time for governments to consider investing more in infrastructure for BAGA. And I think you concluded when we were talking about industry and academia that there's lots of roles that anyone can play in aviation. but the key is finding the right role for the right person. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you summarized it very well, Datin Shelina. I think yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences and insight with us. I think I've certainly enjoyed moderating this. I hope you've enjoyed being on the panel today, and I'm sure everyone who attended has found this to be really a fun and informative session. So with that, once again, I'd like to say thank you to Captain Miwa and Jeff for joining us today, and thank you to everybody who has joined the webinar and has posed questions to us. Thank you.